I'm making a move. Study long, study wrong. Ain't nothing gonna happen on its own. I'm making a move. Don't need no hinges for this song. I got joy all through my soul. I'm making a move.
Broker Breakdown starts now.
Mr. Sun.
Scott, thank you so much for joining me today.
Appreciate you having me, Nick. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your new brokerage. So that's actually where I wanted to start. So just sort of timing-wise, this worked out perfectly because you launched a new brokerage, Circle, just a few weeks ago. So let's just start there. Tell me about the new business. How are things going? And how did you get started with it? Where did the idea come from?
Gosh, I'm excited. It feels like for a while working with the Department of Real Estate to get to where I am today was a 10-month process. I started to lose faith in working with the DRE. So just being live and able to share what we've been working on behind the scenes and letting people know, like keeping things a secret's been kind of tough. And I don't like necessarily lying to people. So I've been just in my little hole doing my own thing. So it feels great to be out. Circle Real Estate is it's a small little indie brokerage right now that I decided to launch after having years of leadership in a big box realtor, which I've still a big fan of today. I owe everything of where I am to that brokerage. But I think the difference of what Circle and why I wanted to launch it was give agents a platform of technology that we're currently using in my own business. So I do have my own real estate team. And I am leveraged with tech and people to allow me to work with other agents on their business and share what we're doing. And it's all about getting your time back so you can focus on what's most important to you. And right now, after being in leadership, I just really gravitate and I get a big fulfillment out of watching other people's businesses succeed. And it's easy when I use the same technology that I'm hoping to see if maybe you or they find value in it as well. And that's kind of the value proposition, is just leading by example.
I love that. Yeah. And I think, it's an interesting time in real estate right now, right? Because there's all these tech tools and marketing tools and all these different things. And, in a lot of ways, I think I know firsthand that a lot of agents are overwhelmed by it, right? I mean, a lot of times they want to sort of be told, go use this particular tool, set it up this way, it's all going to work well for you. So, as obviously you have years of experience with this stuff directly yourself, but as you were thinking about this for your new agents, the people you're bringing in, and it sounds like you've already brought quite a few people into Circle, even just in the first few weeks. How did you? Let me ask it this way: how do you make sure that you're creating an opportunity for agents that you're going to be working with versus for yourself? Like, how do you sort of separate the two? Did you do a lot of interviewing of other people, or was it just I'm going to provide the tech that I know works for me, and I'm going to show them how to set it up the way I used it? I mean, I know this is kind of a complicated question, but I think a lot of people is what they sort of struggle with is, even if I get some advice from somebody to use the tool, how do I know it's going to work for me, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's a great question. And our common denominator between us is Tristan. When I decided to go off on my own, we had a pretty good, what I thought was a good tech stack, but I asked Tristan, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. What would you suggest? What are you seeing out there? And he told me, he says, follow up Boss or Chime, tied to YLOPO, have Sisu tied into that for accountability. And then there are other companies that I knew about, like High Note. And then we had Slack for our internal communication, Broker Mint to run our back end office. And so, it was really about finding follow-up boss that had an API that played nicely with other pieces of technology. Where in the past, we were having to do manual labor from this one to this one to this one to this one. There is no one size fits all. All of the rainmakers out there, we all love to pick and choose what we gravitate towards. And so when you can get them to talk nicely with each other, it makes our life a lot easier. So that was a big aha for me. Because again, that whole tech stack that I just dropped, we're only 1 year into it, right? And so there's still a big chunk of it that we haven't discovered yet, but already I'm seeing the leverage really kick in to help automate the process for us. So if it's good enough for Tristan and other teams who are selling thousands of homes a year, certainly, we were selling around 100, 120 on a good year. It certainly gives us room to grow and ideally sell 1,000 homes too. So again, that tech stack is giving us that capability, which, I'm not necessarily pushing it on agents who want to join us, but what I am showing them is that where are you currently at? What are you currently leveraging in your business? And what are your blind spots or what's holding you back from going big? And it's usually leverage. And again, the piece of it is technology answers or takes a lot of the manual process out of our hands. And then again, it's people, which our value proposition too is we have a virtual assistant company. So we're also giving them a VA, if they choose to help them implement the systems and models that we've already adopted in my business. And we're just giving them the playbook. And what's cool about that too is it's not like I came up with these systems and models. It's spending time with like yourself or Tristan or my other peers and seeing what works for them and just R&D, ripping off and duplicating, and then maybe fine tuning it and massaging it out to work what's best for me. But the foundation is set. And that's that's the value proposition of Circle Real Estate, is about allowing people a platform to get their time back to do money producing activities or just spend more time with their passion, whatever that's family or, sports or activities.
I love that. Yeah. And I mean, who doesn't want to get more of their time back in 2022 at this point, right? So that's a very compelling value proposition. So I do want to ask and then I'm getting kind of more curious from just sort of a personal perspective, but I'm sure a lot of our viewers are probably thinking the same thing, which is, how far can you take this at this point, right? Because I mean, every year there's new tech, every year there's new things you can automate, and obviously you mentioned VAs and being able to use that service to take care of a lot of things for yourself. So maybe walk me through an average day or sort of a single transaction. I mean, what are some of the things that you're able to sort of take out of the hands of the agent or maybe reduce the amount of time it takes significantly?
Yeah, I mean, just the low-hanging fruit, as we just onboarded agents this morning and I met with a few of them, as soon as they uploaded their database into Follow Up Boss and it's tied to YLOPO, last night I got a text message saying, hey, Scott, who's this Raya person talking to my clients? And I felt like, uh-oh. And I said, oh, well, that's the artificial intelligence that comes with YLOPO. We can turn it off, though, right away. I didn't realize it was kicking in on your database. And they said, no, that's okay. It actually helped me just set an appointment. And so I was thinking, and she's asking me, well, what triggered the communication, or how did it know to pick that specific person? And I said, honestly, because we just launched 3 weeks ago, you're the first person to ask me that question. I'm not sure. So let me get my ISA in here. So we called my inside sales agent and he said, well, because we already have a automated OpCity or Ojo inbound lead that came in from, say, my database, it triggered and picked up hers. And that was an Ojo lead that came in, which then triggered the Raya to kick in to say, hey, I'm Julie's assistant, ... And that's how she set the appointment. So it was just kind of, but that's one of many scenarios. Another example would be, so as a lead comes in my world now, because we have our drip campaign set up, if a Zillow or an internet lead comes in, they get an email, they get a text message from me. It's got my high note pitch deck tucked in there as well. And then Raya kicks in, my ISA kicks in, and these are all automation without me doing anything. And Raya will actually took one conversation all the way through to setting the appointment, where I just picked up the phone, called and introduced myself. I know you've been speaking to my assistant. I understand you want to sell. They lived out of area. Gathered all the information that Raya hadn't gotten, like motivation and their time frame and such, and then set a listing appointment for the following day, where Raya spent all day texting back and forth, and my commitment was literally 1 minute and 45 seconds on the phone, got the appointment, met them on a Wednesday night, and got everything under contract. So that's a great example of how this leverage and technology works towards our advantage.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I love. I mean, case studies obviously are great. It's just an opportunity to really see just even in just one instance, but then you multiply that across your business and the impact that can have. Obviously, any minutes you can save here and there, like you said, I mean, you can be used in multiple ways, right? You can use it to grow your business faster, or there's other parts of our lives we might want to spend that time focusing on. So that's really cool. So following up on that, I'm not a real estate agent. I've never been an agent in my life. So I sort of observe the industry as a little bit of an outsider, even though I work with agents 24/7 basically. But one thing that's been interesting to see is over the past few years, companies like Compass, for instance, built this reputation, raised tons and tons and tons of money on the idea that they're a platform, right? We're not just a brokerage, we're a tech platform. We're going to have this system that's comprehensive and handles everything in your business. I mean, obviously it sounds like that sort of aligns with where you're building Circle, right? And it's sort of this direction of being a platform. Do you feel like that is an essential part of being a brokerage, in 2022 and forward, or are there still spaces for brokerages or agents that aren't using this kind of technology?
I mean, in my opinion, I would say this is the definite progression into what we're headed towards. If they're not already, I do believe they will be left behind. I mean, advocates of Tom Ferry or Gary Vee, they'll talk about that all day long. And touching on Compass too, it is. I mean, agents who have gone there love that platform. And what's interesting is, not to knock it, I think it's brilliant, but what they did amazingly well at is just rebranded. I think it really looks like Canva, but it's setting up the system that where everything, it's like a dashboard for easy use.
Right.
But it's not like this big tech conglomerate of this mastermind piece. It's just taking the time to set up market analysis with, embedded pictures and such, depending on what city you're in. They created all these little platforms, so it's a plug and play model, and then you just tweak or fine tune it to your message. But for the most part, when you can have technology like accountability. So if you're scaling out and you're building a team, accountability, one-on-one meetings. How are we doing this week? In the past, you might be kind of guessing with how many calls do you make, how many conversations do we make? Well, when you do those calls in Follow Up Boss, it's going to track it and it's going to transfer it over to Sisu. And without having to manually re-enter the data, it's already talking back and forth. So when I have my one-on-ones, I get to say, well, let's see, how did we do? Well, let's pull it up and boom. Well, let's see, the standard is 100 calls a week. Well, you got to around 60, and of the 60 conversations, let's see how many turned into nurtures or appointments and appointment mets. And so the data is right there at your fingertips, which moves the needle a lot faster to helping agents get into production. I don't think there's any more really hiding about, well, it's just hearsay, or they tell me they're doing this, but then they don't have any opened escrows. The data will tell your story. And I think that's what's crucial, because then people can self-discover. They can see what they are or aren't doing that they need to do to hit their goals.
Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously, we talk about the tech stuff from the agent's perspective a lot, but it sounds like the experience of being a broker or team leader has also changed pretty substantially because of some of this sort of tech-enabled conversations, data and all the stuff that you can pull up at your fingertips at any moment, right? So that's pretty cool. So let's shift. We could talk about tech all day, and we'll probably come back to it before we're done chatting here today. But one question I do have for you is, when you're launching a new company, you have a lot of decisions to make, right? One of the central decisions there is kind of, who are we going to be? What is our culture? What are some of the beliefs or the values that we're going to bring to the table? So because one thing that's interesting is, you've run some of the biggest offices, one of the biggest real estate franchises in the country. And I won't mention the name, you can if you want to, but when you started your own brokerage, what were some of the things that, some of the values or sort of the mission maybe that you wanted to make sure you focused on, and how was that maybe different than what you've seen from some of the bigger existing franchises out there?
Again, I think the direction why I wanted to go independent was really well, the mission and vision and value proposition of who we are. It's just looking for like-minded agents, just growth, people who are looking to do better than they did yesterday, truthfully.
Gotcha.
Being just being good people in general. And I think when you get that kind of environment, community, where there is no judgment, there is no right or wrong, it's just we're all failing forward together. We're all on the same mission of trying to be the best business owner possible, right? And deliver service at a high level, which requires standards. And so I think it's identifying what are the standards of who we are. And usually that might translate into their own respective business. And the company's Keller Williams. Gary's I learned so much with them. I owe a lot to the Red Book, right? And so we talk about mission, vision, and standards. And when you have that as a market center or as a brokerage, if the agents or the team members don't have that within their own business, that's a starting point for them. Who are you? What do you stand for? Why should people do business for you? And creating their own little mission, vision, and value propositions for their own business. I don't know if that really answered your question, but
Sure, yeah. And one thing that stands out to me about that is sort of respecting the agents as the business owner. Sort of understanding that this is their own business. They're their own business owner, their own entrepreneur, and they're each going to have a little bit of a difference between how they handle what they do, and empowering that. It sounds like that's kind of the focus here, is being able to give them all the tools and the systems and everything they need, which can bog somebody down for many months, if not years, trying to figure out on your own, and be able to just get out there and execute. So I can see how that would, I would assume, attract a pretty high performing, driven group of individuals. It sounds like that's what Circle is kind of all about. So that's cool. Yeah. That definitely answers the question. So, another question I have for you is just getting started, right? So you've run a real estate team for years, and I know we talked before we hit the record button here about getting back into production recently, and with the pandemic and everything like that. So one question, I have a couple there, but one for sure is, now that you're starting a brokerage, right, and you're kind of getting that experience, I'm really curious, because a lot of teams nowadays, to me, look a lot like brokerages. They've got support staff, and they've got a whole bunch of agents on their team, and they're doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue sometimes. What are the differences? So having done both recently, what are you kind of noticing as differences between the experience of being a team leader versus, starting a brokerage from scratch?
a lot of decisions have to be made. Right or wrong, decisions have to be made.
Sure.
And I think that's the, for me, that's one of the major differences. We don't have a productivity coach. I don't have necessarily agent services. When you're launching a new office under a brokerage or a franchise model, you have systems in place. We're creating that as we go. And yes, we have an infrastructure, and yes, we have an idea, and we know who's going to do what, but there is not a budget right now for a productivity coach. So I'm not taking on new agents. I don't have the bandwidth to teach contracts and disclosures. So right now there's a threshold, and part of the value proposition is we're only targeting $5 million or more producers. So
Gotcha.
the engagement, maybe the conversations, the masterminds will be a little bit different. We're not talking about what database should I use, what should I send out my SOI, how do I write this RPACA, those are, so again, when I get to tell agents, when we talk about masterminds, you're doing 10 million, this person's doing 20, that person's doing 30 million, the conversations are a lot higher and a lot more value to it. However, as we grow, maybe in the budget allows, maybe we will take on new agents, but we'll have a system for them to succeed in, so we don't recruit people and then they're kind of twiddling their thumbs like, okay, now what do I do? What's next? I'm always mindful of what's in it for them. And if I can't articulate or answer that, then it's probably not the right fit. We're probably not the right fit, but it's always what's in it for them. So I'm very system driven so that when we onboard someone, I want to create the experience just as we would with a buyer or a seller, because now agents, that's my client.
Right.
For my team, yes, the buyer and sellers, that's my client. But for now, my 80% I'm focused on is meeting with great agents, like-minded people who want to take their business to the next level. Maybe it's someone who doesn't really have systems or models, or believe it or not, there's still many agents, I would say 80% of the agents aren't utilizing tech still, or their CRM system. They all have it, but are they really using it? And when I can show them when a lead comes in, we have 4 touches from email, text message, ISAs, AI, all touching them within a first minute and a half. And if that lead goes to you, how many touches are you getting? So we're taking massive mind share straight out of the gates. And just really, again, just sharing and telling our story and showing them by example how this could impact their business. And again, going back to getting their time back.
I love it. Yeah. Well, so let's talk on that in particular for a second here. So let's say an agent comes and starts out with you guys, and obviously they get all these automations, this whole system in place, and it does start saving them a lot of time. Where are they? What are you seeing so far? I mean, I know you're just getting started, so there's only so much data to talk about, but where do you feel like, what should they do with that time? What are you finding is sort of the most impactful thing? Now, hey, I don't have to spend all my time trying to call leads just to get them on the phone and talk to them because I got some systems setting appointments for me. Are they cold calling? Are they doing more networking? Or what are you sort of seeing as the next best thing to invest that time into?
I think it depends. Each individual's different, but for the most part, I would encourage them to spend their time on money producing activities, which the biggest ROI is getting listings. And so a lot of it comes by referral and becomes from sphere of influence, which because they've been in the business for 5 or more years, by default, people know and they get referrals. And when you kind of drill down and peel back the layers, the lion's share of their volume is by sphere of influence and referrals. And then this follow-up question is just curious, Nick, how are you actively touching your sphere of influence, or are they just contacting you because they know you're an agent? And they said, yeah, it's the later. They're just contacting me. So then going back to the MRA, what would it look like if we touched them 33 times? How many pieces of business could we get in addition to the ones? Like you're getting by default 5 or 6 referrals a year, but if you were to proactively spend some energy, send value out, taking them out to lunch, checking in on them, when we can find 3 or 4 past clients that refer you multiple pieces of business, I have 4 or 5 people in my world that refer me 3 to 4 pieces every year. That's like 15 transactions a year that I can chalk up just from those 3 to 4 relationships. Your goal is to go and find those people and start rewarding them and spending more time with them because they're a walking billboard who's helping your business and helping you grow. We need to go find more of those people. So that's what I would say is hone in on that sphere of influence and focus on your relationships. It's really succeeding through people.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that. That's great advice. I mean, so my question on that, because I've actually had agents talk to me about this before, is if you aren't doing it and you all of a sudden start doing it and you start, putting all this work into actually communicating with your sphere, there can be some apprehension around that. I don't want to bother people, or I don't want to come across as like super promotional all of a sudden. What I guess as somebody's making that transition, so as they're realizing, okay, I have all this additional free time now, I should be investing it in building the relationships and staying in touch with the people in my sphere. What are some good first steps there? I mean, do you sort of have certain things you'd recommend that they do? Is it starting to do lots of email newsletters? Is it, reaching out to try to set coffee dates? I mean, what would you recommend as kind of at least a first month or two type to get the ball rolling there?
Well, I mean, it's identifying them and getting them all into your CRM system. Address, phone number, and email. We got to have the methods that we're going to touch them. Right. I think once we get that, you can set up some 33 touch automated programs. But to start, Nick, it's picking up the phone. It's just checking in to see how they're holding up, letting them know maybe you're going to hit the reset button. I decided to transition my business to work by referral. So I just wanted to reach out and see if you knew of anyone at any other time in your social environment, at work or family, would you feel comfortable referring them to me? they'll always say yes. And then we always say, you know, I appreciate that so much. If it's okay, I'm just going to put 2 business cards in the mail. If you ever hear of someone who's thinking about buying, selling, or investing, would you mind handing them my card? They're never going to hand the card. I'm just trying to train them, though, that I want referrals. A lot of people don't know that. They think like, oh, I didn't know you work. I didn't know to think of you, because you're not top of mind. So we need the repetition to stay top of mind. And that's how we're going to retain our past clients, because otherwise we can't compete with Zillows and Redfins of the world who are spending millions of dollars on television trying to take our clients away from us. So if we're going to compete, it's got to get ground level and get very intimate. And that's what it's going to be. It's a contact sport. We got to keep them close to us. Otherwise, we're going to lose them. So really, Nick, I would just preface it as right now you're a solo practitioner. You're trying to transition into a business owner. The way you become a business is by referrals and repeat clients. And so if you're not touching them now, I might take them, or Zillow or Redfin might take them.
Interesting.
But they're yours to lose. You're not top of mind.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, and I love the point too of just like reminding people that you accept referrals, because that does come up a lot where people just, oh, I didn't know, or oh, you know, a big one I hear a lot is, I thought you were busy. I didn't want to bother you, right? I saw you talking about all the deals you're doing on social, and so I just assumed you're too busy for these referrals or for my next transaction, you know, even though I worked with you 5 years ago. So obviously that can be a heartbreaking message to hear as an agent from somebody that did a deal with somebody else, right? So what on that front, I mean, so what are you finding is, because obviously we're all bombarded, right? I mean, we're getting just tons of, I mean, we see 5,000 ads a day on average. I mean, it's just crazy how much content we consume. So have you found anything? And I know it's going to be a little different, you know, across different agents, but obviously there's calling people. That's sort of the old, you know, proven approach. But are there any other types of things that you're recommending to your agents or team that are effective for staying top of mind with some of the sphere?
You know, since one of the, you know, I am a conference junkie. And so when I first got into the industry, I went to a lot of conferences. And the one that really spoke to me back in 2003 was Brian Buffini. I still, to this day, from 2003 until now, I snail mail those items of value, fold up. Brian writes the letter, a little item of value. We fold over 200 of those every single month, stick it in the mail, and it goes out the door. In addition to that, we do pop buys. And yes, we do 3 client appreciation parties, ramping it back up. Pandemic kind of affected us the last 18 months, but ramping it back up. Old school, but it still works. And what they'll tell you is that snail mail is still 100% deliverable. Unlike emails, they get, 15, 20% open rate. You're speaking to a small audience. You know, we do that too, but snail mail still goes out, and we do pop buys, and we do client appreciation parties. And now all I want to do is I just want to do 3 big parties a year, and each year I just want them to get bigger and bigger with great prizes and gifts and giveaways, or the quality of food or the environment steps up on the restaurants or wherever we decide to host it. But I think plug and play model, it's a great one. I also, I'm a fan of Get Viral with Frank. We do a couple videos a month. That's another way to stay in touch.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, so kind of a blend of the old school and the new school there. I like that. So yeah, I mean, it's surprising how much people overlook snail mail, right? I mean, it's actually coming back. I mean, there's more mail being sent now over the past couple years than there was decreasing for a decade or a couple of decades, obviously with the shift to social and online advertising. And I love the fact that, I think it's handwritten, like if the address is handwritten on an envelope, it has like a 98 or 99% open rate, which it's not a single other thing you can do that's going to have that kind of reliable an interaction, right, with that content. So yeah, very cool. Very, very good advice. So, well, Scott, I mean, we're running out of time here, so I do want to give you a chance to give people some opportunity to get started with you, right? Because I mean, if I was listening to this going, man, they're going to free up my schedule, they're going to take care of all this automation with me, and I'm going to be able to get more focused on growing and making more money or spending more time with my family. Sounds pretty appealing. What's the right way to get in touch with you? How does somebody reach out?
Right now it's on our website, circleagents.net is one of them. You'll find a lot of information about us. We're also on every social platform, from Facebook to LinkedIn to TikTok to Instagram, and the YouTube channel as well. Again, it's Circle Real Estate. And then, of course, my cell phone number always works. I love to pick up my phone, 562-716-4767.
All right, very cool. Well, that's a lot of great opportunities to get a hold of you there. It sounds like you guys are very accessible, so that's good to hear. All right, cool. Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation, and obviously, good luck. First few weeks of the new brokerage, sounds like things are off to a great start.
I appreciate it, Nick. Thanks for having me. I had fun.
Good. Well, for those of you tuning in, thanks for joining me for this episode of Broker Breakdown. We'll hope to see you again next week, and we will talk to you then.